Okay, and we're back, and it's COMP308, and it's week 7, lesson 7, part 1. I think this might be the only part, seeing how much time we have. But let's see how it goes. So we talked a little bit about jQuery mobile and what's due for tomorrow, which is going to be your exam, midterm exam. It's going to probably run around an hour and a half, all things considered. So again, I would ask for people who haven't attended this day to kind of study your jQuery mobile for sure, JavaScript, and it's good practice for you as you're moving towards your assignment number 2 submission, which is due Friday. But this is the one I want to give you kind of a preview of what we're going to be talking about coming up next week, right? So again, there's going to be a few piece parts to the things we're working at. One of the things is we're going to start working on something called Node.js. So if I look at Node.js here, if you want to follow me, if I look at Node.js, it takes you to this site here. Now, your system in front of you should have the ability for you to kind of look at Node. Now, if you're using your own laptop, you follow the installation instructions for how to install Node, and it's actually quite an easy way of doing it. You just click install, and then for the different, it's cross-platform, so it works on both Mac, PC, and I believe Linux. And when you click install, it downloads and installs the your Node modules. So Node isn't just alone. Once you've got Node, there's only one piece to it. And if you scroll down, it gives you kind of an example of a web server that's right here. Now, I know the other class has already done this kind of stuff. I'm just going to kind of zoom in here so we can see a little bit clearly at what this looks like. So here's the code that we need for this web server. But how would we kick this off? I mean, so far to this day, we've been using something called WAMP locally if you're doing some development, right? And I kind of talked about WAMP before. But moving forward, we're going to move away from using WAMP and start using Node, right? Okay. So there's a couple pieces here that we have to understand what's going on. I'm going to go in more detail about this when we get together next week. But let's try and put together a little server for ourselves today, right now. Okay, first things first. In order for us to put a server together on your platform, I'm just going to go here. I'm going to switch over to the Windows side, right? You're going to bring up your command prompt. That's the first thing you need to do, right? Because your command prompt is going to be your friend in this case, okay? In order for us to put a Node service together, right, there's a couple things we need to do. So this is the code we need to put together inside of our JavaScript file, and this is called an example.js. Node, of course, is based on JavaScript, and the idea here is like one language to rule them all, right? So you're not going to need PHP, you're not going to need another backend, you're not going to use Ruby on Rails or anything like that. You're going to use JavaScript for everything. That's the idea here, right? So how do I mean, this describes a couple things we haven't seen, and don't worry about if you don't understand what all this means. In a second, you'll see what I'm talking about. What we need to do, right, is we need to set up our service. So first thing that I want you to do is, I'm just going to make this a little bit larger so we can all see it. I'm going to go into properties, and I'm going to go into colors, and I'm going to change the background to white and my foreground to black, just so we can see each other. I'm just changing the command prompts for what it looks like. And I'm also going to change my font so it's much bigger. I'm going to make it console as 20. Right, and press OK. So there it is, a little bit bigger for you guys, right? Okay, so a couple things to note here, right? First of all, we want to try and do this. So go to your terminal window and do this, node, right, ---- version. That's the first thing we got to look at. Now my version shows 12. Now yours might show something else, like 10.36, as an example. Right? What's your version?
Yeah.
Well, if you're using your laptop, it wouldn't be recognized because you need to download and install it. So the way we'd have to install it here on the PC is, let me do it together with you. I'll just install it again, right? So I go into the Node.js website. Let's try this out, Node.js, right? And you need this first before anything else we do going forward, okay? So click on Node.js. Now yours isn't recognized there at all either? Okay. Click on install, right? It's going to download the package. Here it is right here, right, for Node. And then what we want to do is we want to launch the Msi Installer. It'll look like this, starting off. So here's my installation setup. Okay, are you with me? Next, it's going to say, do you want to change the way the features are installed? You can change it, repair, or I can, in your case, you just click Next for install. So just follow the installation guide and finish off your installation. So I've already done this, so I don't have to do it again. Let me know when you guys are ready to go, when you finish your Node installation. You need this in order for you to continue. And now on the school computers, again, I just went to command prompt, right? I can't show you what the school computer looks like, but if you look at command prompt in front of you, did you know how to do that? Or is it allowing you to install Node?
I installed it, but it still doesn't see it.
Where are you getting the command prompt from? That's the other thing. Is there's different kinds of command prompts that you can get, right?
I searched for CMD.
Yeah, it should work. Like mine works here on the machine. What I'll do is I'll take, after I do this demo, I'll come around and make sure it works on your system in front of you. Okay. All right. So one of the things is you need to install Node. All right. When you install Node, and again, have you installed it? It's work in progress. Okay. When you install Node, what you want to do is there's something else. I'm just going to bring up another service we have to look at. There's something else you need to know called Npm. If I look at Npm, and you have to go to npmjs.com, right? What Npm is the Node package manager, because Node isn't good enough just on its own. You need to install different packages. This is what I spoke to you guys about in the first place. And if you notice, there's all kinds of packages that are very, very popular that you can install, as an example, that are here, that are listed here on the Npm website. A couple of really powerful ones. Obviously, you need to install Express, right? Because that's going to be, we're going to be using, that's the E and mean stack, right? So we're going to use that. Of course, Npm itself is the package manager that allows you to install things for Node. Browserify, we might talk about Browserify and how that allows us to call upon resources in our application without actually having them physically there. Bower is another way of installing packages similar to Npm. Gulp is our automator. It allows us to automate things within our system. We're going to probably cover a little bit of Gulp, right, for sure, and Grunt, which is runs certain tasks, right? So Gulp kind of automates things, and we use Grunt to do things. There's also automation that we can go to from Yeoman, which generates. There's a bunch of generators that you can use that can generate a framework or a scaffold really, really quickly, and we can use Yeoman for that. I'm not going to talk about the other ones too much because they're really good, but we only have some weeks together, and we can't talk about every aspect of Node. For the most part, though, we're going to be using Node as our backend server. That's what we're going to be using with it. We're not going to really be using it as for routing and all that kind of stuff. For that, we're going to probably go to Express. Okay, so have you guys finished your installation of Node? Okay. If you finish the installation of Node, then if you do this Node, again at the command prompt --version, then you should get a version. My version is 12. What's your version? 12, right? That's the most recent version. On the Mac, if you're a Mac person, I'm just going to do it on the Mac so you can see it as well. It's the terminal window on the Mac, and you would do the same thing, Node --version, and then you're going to see the version, the same thing on the Mac. So both sides, Mac and PC, look very similar. And again, it all comes down to installation. Now, does yours work on your machine in front of you? Yeah. But yours doesn't. That's weird. Okay, so why don't you follow along with your partner next to you so you just can see what I'm going to do, right? Because that's important. Okay, so we need to put this code in here, but the first thing I need to do is there's a couple of things I can do. First of all, I'm going to use this command, npm init. Let's try that, npm init, right? If I do that, it's going to ask me a series of questions, okay? Now, the npm init command is going to work inside a directory that we're going to use. So if I if I ever want to quit from anything that I want to do, if I don't want to do this initialization, I can use Control-C. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to Control-C out of this init, and it takes me back into my, look what it did. It takes me back into my CLR. Let's try that again. It takes me back out, right? So what I need to do first is set up a folder I got a couple folders here on the side that I've already pre-set up. But I want to set up a folder here on my desktop. Let's do that for now, where we can kind of host our files for Node. Okay, so I'm going to right click on my desktop and I'm going to go new and I'm going to go folder, right? And I'm just going to call this, node, lowercase. Doesn't matter what we call it, okay? This is just our node demo right now, right? So here's our node. And I need to kind of navigate to here, right? So on the Mac, it's really nice and easy. If I was to create a node folder, so I'm just going to new folder, and if I rename this thing node, right, then all I have to do when I go into terminal on the Mac, right, if you're a Mac person, is go cd, right, and then drag my folder in here, and then I would be able to go into it. Nice and easy. On the PC, it's not so easy, but it's not that difficult either. One thing is you can double click on the folder itself, and if you're using a modern version of Windows, for example, my version is Windows 8, right? You might be using Windows 7, same thing. You can certainly click on this, right click, and say copy address as text. Yes? Right click, copy address as text. Huh? You can, but let's try it one way or another. Let's try this, because some people may not be able to do that. And then once I've copied address as text, I can do the same thing. I can kind of go cd, right click, paste, right? And then it'll take us into the folder that we want. I can also try doing that other thing, what I do with the Mac. I can try and just drag and drop. So I go cd, and then drag and drop this into here, and then it'll do the same thing. Both the Mac and PC does kind of similar things. It'll take us into this. Now we're in this directory, and if you notice, sorry, it's empty, right? It's an empty directory right now. That's just a Mac command. Okay, here is where I want to do my npm init command, okay? So I do npm, let me just clear the screen so you can see it. So I'm going to do it CLR. Okay, I'll launch it again for you guys to see that one more time. Bear with me. I want to do a cd, drag and drop, enter, and then I want to go in here, npm init. Okay, now it's going to say, hey, here's our, it's almost like a little batch file that's going to run, that's going to tell us we're going to put all of our modules inside this package.json file, right? That's automatically going to be generated, right? This is our first step when we create our Node application. So the first thing I want to say is, what's the name of my project? Like right now it's called Node, right? And that's fine. It's just taking the name of my folder. You can specify whatever you want in here. You can change it so that instead of Node, if you wanted to call it My App or whatever, that would be the name that you put in here. By the way, you can always modify this after. I want to press enter here. Okay. Now the versioning, from a versioning perspective, it says 1.0.0. But I want to redirect you guys a little bit to a little bit of what versioning is. And there's a little site that you can go to for versioning. It's called semantic versioning. If you go to semver.org, right? It takes you down this path of how to do versioning properly, right? So if you're actually going to do versioning for your clients or whatever, and if you're going to do versioning for me, for your external documentation, this is a really good way of doing it. So again, a major revision for the first one, where you make incompatible API changes, right? Given a version number, right? Major, minor, patch. So major is here, this first digit, major, minor, patch, okay? Major, minor, patch. So major is when the version you make is incompatible with the previous one. Minor is when you make add some functionality in here. And then patch is when you're just making it, doing some bug fixes and you're doing it in here. Okay, so for now, using this kind of semantic versioning, which I like, right? The right way to decide our version would be something like 0.0.1. That might be good enough. You could also choose 1.0, which is our first version, right? Both ways are fine, right? But I like to start off with the initial version. Press enter. Our description is, this is an example server using Node.js, right? Okay, that's kind of what our description is. Our entry point. This is the first JavaScript module. Because remember, Node.js is all JavaScript. It's JavaScript on the back end, right? And this is our first JavaScript module that we're going to be using, right, when we talk about which module is going to be fired up when we fire up Node, okay? So the first module or first file is going to be, in this case, index.js. We can call it whatever we want. We can call it node.js. I don't recommend it. We can make it app.js. We've seen that a lot. Or whatever the name of your module is. If you're making your application and you're calling it, portfolio.js might be the way you enter, right? For now, let's leave it as is, index.js, and press enter. Our test command, we can create tests, unit tests for our node server. Right now, we're just going to not do that for now and just press enter. Our Git repository, we can actually indicate if we have a Git repository in there. If we don't have a Git repository, we don't want to include one for now, we'll press enter. And keywords, again, if we were going to have multiple node apps that we're going to use, then we want to use keywords from a searchability perspective. We're going to just press enter here as well. Author I'd like to put in, so I'm going to put my name. You can put your name, right? Author. And I'm going to press enter. And then a license, there's different kinds of licensing. For now, I don't want to really talk about license, so I'm just going to accept the default ISC and press enter. Okay, well this is what it's done. This is an example, almost like a preview of what my package.json file is going to look like. So I'm going to have my node, my version number is going to change, I put a little bit of a description, and this is what my package is going to look like. It's really a JSON file that looks just like this, right? And then, is this okay? I need to type in yes, right? And press enter. Okay, cool, let's see what we've got now. So I'm going to go dir, right, for directory. And if I've done things properly, if you notice, I've got package.json right here. Package.json. Well, I'm going to pull up a text editor now. You can put up whatever text editor you want. I'm just going to use Sublime Text for now, right? But you can pull whatever text editor you want. It doesn't have to be Sublime or anything like that. I'm just going to kind of exit out of here for a second, right? Because just I don't need this stuff. And with Sublime and with other text editors, you can kind of drag and drop your package right onto here. So if I just kind of drag and drop, I have access to my files, right? But really what I'm doing is just looking at what I've got here from my package. Now take a look. It's not really much, right? I have my node. This is the name of my module or my file. My versioning, 0.0.1. My description. What file is going to kick off first? Index.js. I don't have that file yet, but I'm going to create it. I got some scripts that I'm going to run. Right now there's a test. I'm not really running any scripts. I'll leave it like as is for now. And my license, I could get rid of it if I want. And the way to do that, of course, this is JSON. So I got to be cognizant of this last comma. If I get rid of this, for me to make it proper JSON, I got to get rid of this comma too, right? Because I'm really creating almost like an object, right? So I got to get rid of all this. Let's get rid of it because I don't need any licensing, let's just say. And I can save it with Control S. So there it is. So that's my new file. Okay. Here also we're going to put in, you're going to see some things popping up here for dependencies. Let me just exit out of this. I'm going to kind of kick off a new file, and again, I'm in Node. I'm in Sublime Text, but you can certainly use any editor you like. I'm going to right-click here. I'm going to go New File, right? And inside there, I'm going to make it called index.js. You can also use. Sorry, that's not what I wanted to do. I'm going to save it as file save as index.js because that's the file that I'm going to host my server on. Now again, you can use any editor you want. We're going to do this later on with Visual Studio, but for now, let's just do it with a text editor. Okay, here's my index.js, and this is where I want to make all my server commands fire up. Well, let's go back to the example. Here's the example on the Node site. So here is var. I'm declaring a variable called HTTP, which is going to require the HTTP service. That's what I'm doing here with this first little bit of code, right? So I'm going to copy all this stuff right from the Node site. All this stuff from the var on down right to here. I'm going to copy it and I'm just going to paste it inside my index.js file. So here's what I got. Let's explain this line by line. So again, I'm declaring a variable HTTP, which is actually requiring the HTTP service, right? Okay, that's what Node allows you to do. And from the HTTP variable, right, the object that we're getting here, we're called HTTP. We're using the create server method, and we're using an anonymous function. Please be cognizant of what this is. You guys should know JavaScript enough to know what this is, an anonymous function. It's not a name function. and it runs from this curly brace all the way down to here. That's the anonymous function, right? So this anonymous function is called when we create the server. And there's two piece parts to it. One of them is a request, right? So this is we're requesting information, and this is where we send or respond to the information. So there's two parts to of the server when we use this anonymous function: a request from the server and a response, server response. Okay. Well, we're responding by writing the head of our HTML response to any of the requesters. For example, my browser would be a requester, right? When I request service from a server, I make a request of it saying, hey, I want access to your server, right? So we're going to send in a response from our server, and it's going to write the head with a code of 200, and it's going to tell the head of the server what kind of content we're going to send back. Our content is going to be text. That's the content we're sending back. And then I'm going to send a response that says, hello world. That's actually going to go back to the server. I'm also going to listen on a custom port. Let's change this port, the custom port, from 1337 to 3000. And let's take away this 127.0.0.1. What's 127.0.0.1, by the way? It's localhost, right? But we don't need this right now because we're going to assume you can actually choose whatever you want to listen on, by the way. If you want to listen on a specific IP address, you could do that as well. So if you're setting this up for yourself, instead of localhost, you could specify your IP address of your machine, 192.168. whatever, right? Okay, and you can listen on multiple ports as well. So this is the one thing I want to do. This listen method is actually, if anything, is an event handler. That's what it is. So this is the event handler right here, this listen. Here, after the listening is done, we want to kind of put together this console command that says, hey, server running at, just to give the users where it's running. And remember, we changed this, so it's going to be localhost, right? Localhost and 3000 is where it's going to go, right? Just going to save this. It's a separate command, right? This is what it would look like. So this is all bundled together. So these are the three pieces that you need to run your server right here. These three pieces. Okay, cool. So once you've got this, I'm just going to exit out of here. In fact, I'm going to exit out of this whole program, right? If I go back to my directory structure now, I've got two pieces. I've got an index.js right here. Take a look. And I've got my package.json file right here. Okay? My package.json file tells Node what my dependencies are, what my starting JavaScript file is going to be. It does routing. It does a bunch of other things. For now, that is the starting piece. My package.json is important, and it's part of every Node installation you're going to see. Okay? And the other really important part is my starting JavaScript file. For now, it's just this index.js. How do I run the server? I'm going to run it like this: node space index.js, and press enter. If I've done things correctly, it's going to give me a response that says server running at HTTP localhost 3000. Okay, cool. So I'm going to run it. I'm going to kind of put together my browser now. Here's my browser. And inside my browser, I'm going to say, okay, I want to access that host, right? So let's go there. So I'm going to go localhost, right? And 3000, and press enter, and it's going to say, hey, hello world. Why? Because we get this hello world response. You should get the same thing if you try it out. And so now we're actually running a little server, right? That's what this thing does. And if you look back here at our file structure, here's our file structure again. We've got these two files, index.js and package.json. And if you notice, it'll keep running until I press Control-C. We're going to have to keep doing this over and over again. We're going to have to activate our server, and then to get out of it, Control-C, right? And then what happens is if I try and do this again here, I'm in Node localhost 3000. If I refresh, it's going to say, hey, I don't know what you're talking about, because my server is off. Right? My server is off. So really, that's Node in a nutshell. What Node does is it allows us to install a server really, really quickly. And if you notice, here's some other examples up here online, right? This is exactly what we've done. We've kind of installed this basic setup here. And, again, if you notice, there's other require statements we can put in. This require statements are the packages that we ask for, right? I can write sockets if we want to, create. This is great. Node can be used for all kinds of things. At its basic level, Node, though, is what it represents for us is a way of creating a server that's JavaScript based, and we use our familiar JavaScript language to create our node or our server on the back end, we create things like routes for our back end and so on, right? So kind of this is what Node would be. Well, Node is cool, but Express makes it way cooler, right? So that's the next piece that we need. I'm going to go to Express.js. Oops, not that one. So Express.js, if you look that up, if you notice, it says, here we are, this is the Express framework, if you will, for Node.js. And what it does, it makes it even easier for us to add routing and all this kind of stuff. And actually, it includes things like templating from the get-go. These two things right here, Node and Express, is going to be the way we're going to start making our first website. And we're going to make a foundation website with Node and Express. Okay, let's show you how this works. If I go to Getting Started, and if I go to Installing, this is another piece. Now the thing is, with Node and with these things, everything is command line, like I said to you before. So you need to know the command line. So we did this node npm init, right? That's what kind of sets up the package.json file. And what we want to do is we're going to do this next piece, which is npm install express and the -- save command, right? We already have our package. And when we do that, let me just go back here, right? So I'm just going to do this here. I'm going to go npm, follow me now, install, right, express, right? And by the way, what I want to do is when I use Express, the Express we're going to use, our templating engine is going to be EJS. There's two. There's Jade and EJS that come with Express, but EJS is very easy for us to understand. We're going to put this switch -E for Express, right? Because we want to use the EJS templating engine, right? And in here, we're going to put in -- save. And what this does is it installs this templating engine and Express into our package. Let's just do a directory. Again, I'm just going to kind of close this down for a second and relaunch for you guys to see it nice and clearly. Here we are. If I go into my folder again, so I'm going to go CD, kind of drop this in there and press enter, and kind of do a directory on it, right? I see now that I have index.js, my node modules, which is something new I never had before, right? And my package.json file. Let me look and see what's in that node modules folder. So I'm going to go CD node modules, press enter, and then kind of do a directory on that. I have my Express package that kind of is inside. It's inside my node modules folder, right? That's what it's in there right now. And if I actually look inside the Express folder, so I'm going to go CD Express, right, and I kind of do a directory on that, I see that I've got a bunch of other files. I've got another index.js file. I've got another package.json file, and so on. And a bunch of more node modules. Let's take a look at that one. So I'm going to CD node modules, and I want to have a directory. And these are all the other modules that Express comes with. So that one command, npm, which is Node Package Manager, that's what it stands for, install Express and -- save, what it did was it kind of put it into our project, right? And included all of these dependencies. That's what they are. Okay, let's take a look now. I'm just going to reopen up our folders, and if you notice, I've got a couple of other things. Take a look at this now. If I look at my package.json file, after I loaded Express, I got another line in here called dependencies. Because I use the -- save switch on my command line, it adds this dependency, and it says, hey, my dependency for this module is Express, and it's at least version 4.12 or higher. That's what this little caret here means, right? So it says, make sure I have Express at least 4.12 or higher. Okay, let's demonstrate that. So what if I'm generating this thing, because you never want to have the npm install modules. This node module here, I never want to include it when I put this up on GitHub, because this is just stuff that I load so that my package works. I never want to include this in my GitHub. In fact, in my git ignore, I'm going to put in node modules. I don't want any node module to be put up on GitHub. I don't need it. All I need is my index.js, my package.json file, and any of my files from my website. But I don't need this to go up on GitHub. I need it in my project so it can work, but I don't need it. So you're going to, obviously, sometimes you're going to go on GitHub and you're going to get something without these node modules. So let's get rid of it for a second. So let's delete it manually. Okay, cool. I've deleted it. How do I get it back? Well, I know, so I'm going to kind of just get in here again. Here's my node. I'm going to go cd, drag and drop, and then go into that folder again. And if I know that in my package.json file, I have a dependency called Express, as an example, with at least a certain version number, all I need to do to get it back is do this, npm install. If I do that and press enter, it's going to go through my package.json file and download any of the packages I need. And if you notice, take a look, my package is back. My node modules is back after I deleted it, and Express is back in there. So my package.json file then presents a couple of things that it does for us. One is it details how and what is inside my website, right? And two, it also talks about the dependencies that I need for my node server and my node package to work. Okay, cool. I like this. I really do, right? But I have to do everything from scratch if I just load up Express like this. I have to kind of create all my structure manually for Express. If I go back to Express for a second, it shows you how to install Express, right? This is cool. But it really doesn't do anything for us, right? What I'd rather use is something called an Express generator, right? Because it gives us a little bit of scaffolding, a little bit of folder structure. You know, we keep on doing this. How many times have you and I, as a team here, we always do this. I go into my Visual Studio and I go, okay, file, new, I want to create a new folder, I want to create my CSS files, I want to create my this, create my that, and then kind of come up with this templating, or boilerplate is what I call it all the time. I got to create this boilerplate all the time. Well, this Express generator does it all for us. But in order for you to use the Express generator, we're going to run this new command, npm install express-generator-g, which basically says it's going to go in the general installation. It's not going to be specific to your installation for your module. It's going to be for your entire system, for your entire operating system. Okay, so if I was to do that here, and I'll show you how that looks, it would look like this. I'm just going to close this off. And again, I'm just going to open up I'm going to close this off too and open up a new thing. And I'm just doing it in any command prompt. I'm going to go npm install, right? And I'm going to say express-generator, right? And then -g. And what -g does, I'm just going to kind of do that again, it'll install the generator for, you know, it's system-wide, right? So it tells me where my generator is, okay? Now, the great thing is, I don't have to use node, anything. I can use express as a command, right? And let's do that. So here's my node folder. Let's leave that alone the way it is. That was my node server. Let's make an express server, okay? Which is, I'm just using a node, my node server, and I'm using express as a framework around it. That's all I'm doing. Let's try this out. So I'm going to go express, right? And now I'm going to mention what my file or my server is going to be called. I'm going to call this my app, okay, express my app, and press enter. Now if I do this here, look where I am. I'm in the wrong place. I need to be on the desktop, right? So let's go to the desktop. And the way, of course, we find the desktop is I go to C, right? Sorry, C:\\. And we're going to have to get out of here in a second because the people are going to come and kick us out. C:\, or you can go up the ladder. Let's go up the ladder to here. And then from there, what you want to do is you want to go to users. In my case, I want to go to Tom, and I want to go to desktop. Now, if you don't know how to get there this way, you can also go through your file explorer. And if you notice, here's desktop. Well, desktop, I can right click on here and copy the address just like we did before. And I can go in here and go CD and then, you know, copy the address in there, paste, and it tells me where I want to go. I'm obviously at desktop, and it's incorrect, right? Because it's trying to get the desktop from inside of my users, but this is the path that you need to use here. Users, Tom, desktop. I need to get there because I want to put my file folder, my new file folder that I'm going to create with Express, on my desktop. Let's take a look at that. So I'm going to go Express, now that I'm in desktop, Express, and I'm going to call my new file my app, right? And press enter. Okay, now all this is generated for me. Here's my app. It's a generator. That's what it's called. We're going to do this a bunch of times, guys, so don't worry if you don't get it this one time, right? Here's my app, right? This is my folder. And if it also says, look, it says the next step I got to take here is do this. cd myapp and npm install. What that means is I got to go cd. I'll do this from scratch again. Here, let's just start it off again like this. I'm going to kind of pull this up. I'm going to go cd. I'm going to kind of drag and drop my app in there and press enter. And I want to go, let's go to a directory. Look what's in there already. I've got my app.js file, my package.json file, a bin folder, a public folder, a routes folder, a views folder, all the scaffolding I need for my website. All right? And now I'm going to do something like this, npm install. And what npm install, of course, is going to do is going to grab all those dependencies that I have listed here in my package.json file. And it grabs all these dependencies and puts them in. And when I do a directory again, I notice that I have a node modules section, which it just grabbed all those node modules. Well, this is great, and I want to run my file, but I can't just do node app.js to run my file in this case, because I'm using Express. I need to do this, node dot backslash bin backslash www, because that's the way it's set up for as a default with Express. And if I press enter, it doesn't give me any feedback, but I know my server is running. Let's take a look and see what that does. So here is my localhost 3000. I press enter, and I get Express. Right? So I'm actually running a server, but I'm actually running server pages. And we'll go into this a little bit more detail next week. But if you notice, this is where my server is. If I look at my file structure, I'm just going to stop this for a second. Here's my file structure. Notice I'm getting a response back. Here's my get response, telling me what it was doing for me and how many milliseconds it took to respond, right? If I look at my file structure here, if I pull this up now, here's my Sublime. I'm just going to pull in my app in here instead. Here's my app, right? And if you notice what I got in here, I've got a bin, right, with a www file. This is almost like a routing for what my file would look like. And I've got my node modules in here. These are all the node modules that included. My JSON, my package.json file looks like this. Right now I don't have stuff in here. Like I don't have, for example, my version number is not correct. I want it to be 0.0.1. I can change that. I can also I can add an author like we saw before, and I want to call me as an author, right? So Tom. And when I add my author in there, I got to put my comma because it's a proper JSON file. I'm going to save. Right? So here's I'm saving my file. That's fine. And I also have in here some views. And if you notice, I have the way I installed Express in this case is I installed it with Jade, right? But what I really wanted to do is install it with EJS. So this is the first time. If you notice, the default is with Jade, a Jade extension. But what I really want is this EJS extension. And the way I would do that is I would do it the same way. I would say I want to go to my desktop, right, which is users Tom, right, and desktop. I'm just doing it the long way. And then from there, if you notice, I want to go do my Express install again. I go Express, right, and I can use a -E switch, and I'll say my second app, right? And when I do that, it kind of installs my second app. I can go into my second app, right, which is down here, right? So I can go cd my second app. And when I do that, I can go do an npm install there. And I just want to show you what that looks like really quickly before we leave. Hey, come in, Syed, don't worry. Come in. And when I do that really quickly, if you notice, if I go pull up, Sublime Text, I'm just going to pull in my app too. Come in, don't worry about it. I'm going to pull up my second app. Here's my second app up here. I'm just going to pull it into Sublime Text to see the difference. And if you notice with Sublime Text, for my views, I get EJS, which is what we want to work with. We don't want to work with Jade, because Jade looks a little funny. You want to understand it as much as EJS. EJS looks like regular HTML, right? Here's white HTML with a bit of markup, which we're going to talk about later. So that's it for me for this week. Remember, tomorrow's the exam, and next week we'll start more into Node and Express.